Representative Carson, and I chair the newly formed House Subcommittee from Oversight that is digging into tourism, recreation, and the arts. And this is our fourth meeting. The first three meetings that we had, we just sort of did what I call a 101, where we did an intro to tourism, an intro to the arts, and an intro to recreation, so that we could all sort of get caught up on a few of the basics about those issues. And the purpose of today's meeting is to dig into a little bit into one of the issues sort of floating around the tourism community. So I think I'm going to ask Zaire to take the attendance. Can you do that, please, Zaire?
Absolutely. Chairwoman Carson.
Present.
Whip Chippendale.
Oh, Chippendale.
Yep.
I don't think he's on this subcommittee.
Oh,
Is he?
I believe so. I'll double check though. Rep
Okay.
Portfriend.
Present.
Rep Hawkins. Rep Newberry. Rep Solomon. Okay. That
Right.
concludes the
Newberry and Solomon. I'm not sure about Chip, but you're welcome. I didn't think he was on this, but that's okay.
I will double
don't need to
check,
worry about it.
Chairwoman.
We don't need to worry about that. Okay, so I want to welcome, I want to say a few things before we get started. The first thing is that this is the first time that this particular subcommittee has used Webex for public participation. Usually oversight committee meetings are, the first two that we had, we didn't really have public participation. So what happened is the staff sent out the links to the Webex to some people, and then who want to testify and make a public comment, and then realize that, you know, the public testimony is really over the phone. So that's why we have a few of the folks that are making comments today are on the Webex. Generally, the Webex is just for staff and House members, but that's okay. We're doing a hybrid today. No big deal. So for those that are watching on Capitol TV, that's why we have a few of the folks that are testifying. If you signed up to testify on the phone, we have your name. You will be called upon after in some kind of order after we have a brief presentation. So don't worry about that if you're on the phone and you're not on the Webex. I want to make a few opening remarks. Most people know that I chaired a House subcommittee on a House study commission on tourism for about 4 years. And so many of the issues around tourism and many of the folks that'll be talking to us today from the tourism community are friends of mine. And we're all really glad that this subcommittee has been created. It's a standing subcommittee, so we can really continue to work in an ongoing way on tourism-related issues. And one of the things that was generally under discussion over the past few years was the distribution of the hotel tax. The hotel tax was created about 30 years ago, and it's a tax that's paid on hotels. And the money is split between the tourism councils, the Department of Commerce, and the municipalities where the hotels are located. And that's varied over the past few years. We've tinkered with it the past few years in the budget. But there's been an underlying concern about how that formula works, how that distribution works. There are currently 2 pieces of legislation pending that would make changes to that distribution formula, and they will be heard presumably later on in the session in finance. But I decided to have this oversight hearing because it's the responsibility of oversight to sort of dig into things that are under debate, not necessarily with attached to legislation. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity for my House colleagues to learn more about this, because this is something that most of us in the House really don't know much about. So I figured we have the 2 bills in finance, and I don't know what will happen to them. And then we also have oversight. So we'll discuss the issues from a few different points of view. And that was why I wanted to have this hearing today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hear from Beth Cotter, who is staff to the Oversight Committee, and she's going to present to us a basic understanding of how the hotel tax works. Beth, you got that?
Yes, I do. Hold on.
Thank you.
Cook it twice.
Does it see my screen?
Yep, you actually see your screen right there. Wait.
Sorry, here we go. Thank you.
That's
Hi, Rep. Carson asked me to do a quick presentation on the history of the hotel tax distribution. The hotel tax has changed several times in recent years in both how it's distributed and what is taxed. There are 3 different taxes applied to hotel rooms: the 7% sale tax that goes all to the general fund, the 5% state hotel tax, which is distributed to commerce, the municipalities, and the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the 1% local tax, which goes to the municipalities. I will focus on the distribution of the state hotel tax for this presentation. The state has 4 regional tourism districts: South County, Northern Rhode Island, Aquidneck Island, and the statewide district. 3 municipalities have their own district. East Providence is not in a district, and the Division of Taxation is holding its distribution, which is about $400,000 until it joins a district. The city has actually voted to join the Northern Rhode Island district, and there's a bill introduced that has the necessary changes to do that. This is how the hotel tax was distributed prior to 2016. The tax is distributed between the districts, the tourism districts, the Providence Warwick, CVB, cities and towns, and the general fund. In the 2016 budget to fund a major tourism and marketing campaign, shares for all the districts were decreased. The general fund share went to commerce, and the tax was expanded to include short-term rentals. Regional districts were also required to incorporate the state campaign to receive their share. The hotel tax at this time was expanded to include small bed and breakfasts with 3 or less rooms and short-term rentals such as Airbnbs. If the whole residence was rented, the sales and local tax applied. If a space within a residence was rented, such as a room, the sales, state hotel tax, and local tax applied. The revenues from the state hotel tax from hosting services was divided between the cities and towns and Commerce Corporation only. The districts did not receive any of this revenue. This is how the tax was distributed after the fiscal year 2016 changes. This was between January and June of that year. There were concerns, as you remember, with the rollout of the statewide campaign and the impact on the regional tourism councils. So there was a temporary reversal of the regional reductions. In the 2017 budget, there was a 1-year reprieve, and with the distribution returning to the 2015 shares. This is the distribution with that reprieve. And then in the fiscal year 19 budget, there were permanent changes to the distribution, and the regional shares were partially restored from the 2016 cuts. In fiscal year 20, the revenue from the hosting platform services was distributed like the other hotels. This shifted more resources from commerce to the regional districts. So this is from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. You can see the revenue to the districts was increased, but the hosting services was still split only between the cities and towns and the Commerce Corporation. And this is actually the current tax allocation. Revenues from hosting services like Airbnbs are no longer treated differently. So this is just an example what happens on the $150 room. There's this state sales tax. The hotel tax would be $7.50. The local tax would be $1.50, with the total taxes collected would be $19.50. If we just look at the state hotel tax, that 5% tax, this is how that $7.50 would be distributed currently. Thank you very much on the brief history of the hotel tax distribution. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You did a great job, Beth. That was terrific. You know what I'm going to ask you to do? Please send it to all the members of the subcommittee, and and the chair as well, please.
It's currently up on the website, the Oversight website, but we'll make sure to email it also.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you very, very much. That was very informative. So I think for my colleagues on the phone, my House colleagues, I think it's probably pretty apparent that that formula for distributing that money has gone through a lot of changes in the past couple of years. And I think that there's an interest among some people in Rhode Island to really see if we can creatively redesign this formula once and for all and not make all of these changes. So that's the reason I wanted to have this conversation today. So we do have about 7 people that would like to testify and make a few comments. So I'm going to take them in the order that they registered, which would make a Louise Bishop of South County Tourism first. So can somebody get Louise on the phone, please?
Rep. Carson?
You can't. Oh, there she is. Louise?
Yes,
Oh, hi, Louise. It's Lauren Carson. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank
Good.
you.
You're on with the House Subcommittee on Tourism, and you're being broadcast. We can all hear you.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you, Chairwoman Carson, and all the members of this committee. I am in favor of House Bill 6297. Over this past year, we've had to redirect and reimagine how to move forward with the unknown of our season. We made decisions that included staffing levels, changes, decrease in programming, and cancellation of the production of our travel guides. It became clear additional change was needed to remain whole, and that brought us to the 5% subsidy that goes to Providence Warwick CBD. It's been delivered for over 20 plus years without any return on investment. And the Rhode Island Department of Revenue shows that in the past 10 years, Providence CBD has received $7 million from all regions collectively. In order to generate that sum, there would have been $2 billion in economic spending within all other regions to be able to donate this amount. The mission of South County Tourism is to market the South County region that encompasses 11 towns. While we do this on many levels, it's at the trade shows that we continue to share itineraries that include all regions, making Rhode Island more attractive to the visitors. We don't look for compensation. The need has become greater to support South County chambers of commerce, business associations, as well as develop and support events. All tourism regions within our state are entitled to the work of their units. This is the time to rectify the policy and resolve the inequity so that we can all move forward fully supporting our regions. That's pretty much how I see this bill.
Is that it, Louise? You done?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. No, I just want to make sure before I move on. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Any questions for Louise? Okay, so next is Kristen. You're up, Kristen.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Chair Carson? Oh,
Sure.
I had a quick question. Could she repeat the bill number that she was referring to, please?
6297.
Thank you.
6297.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Carson. If you don't mind, I did a brief presentation that I'd like to share with all of you if you have a moment.
Sure.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to run through because I understand that this really pertains to my organization. So I wanted to walk you through a little bit about particularly what we've done during the pandemic, but also holistically about where we are. So here are our statewide initiatives. We run the Rhode Island Sports Commission, and I know this committee has spoken with my colleague John Gibbons and learned a little more about what they do. We also are in charge of meeting and convention sales and filling the state-owned Rhode Island Convention Center and working with the Dunkin' Donuts Center and the vets when it's appropriate, when they're doing meetings. We also do some collaborative marketing projects. We like to work with the other regions and with commerce. We feel, as I think all of the regions do, that a rising tide lifts all boats. And then this is something that I'm very interested in and that is coming up more in tourism. The work that we do has direct correlations with economic development. Particularly in the past year, that has been an issue in Providence, as it is our economic capital, but it's also a city that has suffered tremendous losses during this pandemic. So we become more interested in that way of using the quality of life things that we all, as tourism regions, are so good at, and using them to help with business. So the Rhode Island Sports Commission, super briefly, it's a division of the CVB, and as part of that, it books business statewide, but it's also cost effective because they save on everything from rent to marketing costs as being part of our entity. This is a little bit about the Sports Commission's impact, and you can see regionally where we do our work. We do book things throughout the state. You'll see it does skew heavily to Providence and Warwick, and that's simply because a lot of the work that we do with sporting events does rely on the convention center, and it also relies on the dunk. Sports makes up about probably 40% of our business, and probably could be even more, but we like to keep that mix of professional business organizations that might be a little more lucrative. I won't go through all of this, but it's just a list of the properties and the venues that we use in Providence and Warwick, Blackstone Valley, South County, and Newport.
Hold on a second. Go back to that so we can read that. Okay, let's.
Sure. So that's Blackstone Valley.
So when was this time period that we're looking at?
This, I believe, is 16 through 1920, around there.
This is 5 years.
About 5 years, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting stuff. Thank you.
Sure. And this is as we recover from the pandemic, these are the things that are coming back more quickly, our sporting events. So you have Firecracker Baseball, which is a tournament that'll be here on the 4th of July. And we took this almost as a case study. So you can see how many of the rooms were contracted. And they really are across a wide swath of Rhode Island. Ocean State Lobster Fest, we do a lot of ice hockey tournaments. So we use that one too as a sort of a case study. So you can see how we are using different venues throughout the state. And a lot of times we need a lot of ice or a lot of fields. So we also use educational facility and municipal athletic fields across the state. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I did want you to see the steps that are entailed in booking meetings and conventions and sporting events. And particularly that one on the end there, which is a new tourist created. One of the things that happens when people come to Rhode Island is they don't just stay, when you go to a conference, you don't just stay in the hotel. You get out, and particularly if it's an attractive destination like Rhode Island. So we find that people may stay in Providence and Warwick and go explore the rest of the state. We find sometimes that venues are used outside the Providence-Warwick area for an off-site party or part of their meeting. And eventually the goal is to create a new tourist here in Rhode Island. We want them to stay longer and we want them to come back. So just to show you what we do particularly for the convention center, my team in 19, which unfortunately was the last good year, booked about 284 meetings, conventions, and sporting events. Those events result in about $87 million in direct spending for the state, including 32.6 in sports business, and that's about 123,132 room nights. We also have a convention services department who take care of everything once a meeting and convention or sporting event is booked. And we have 2 people that do that. And they have serviced about 233 groups in that 1 year.
Okay, so stop there, please. I have some questions. Go back to that slide.
Sure.
So when you look at these resulting 123,132 hotel room nights, does that relate to the other slide 2 or 3 ago that showed you how many you booked in each town? Is that what
Yes,
that
it's part
represents?
of that. So like
Okay,
I said, sports is a portion, but it is not the entire business that we do.
so that slide that I asked you about before, that included sports but had other stuff in it?
This one includes sports, but has other stuff in it. That one was solely sports.
Oh, now I'm confused.
So let me go back.
Oh,
So this one is pure sports. This
Okay.
is only sporting events. And this is over a longer period. This one is a 1-year period, and it is everything: sports, meetings, conventions, basically anything my team books.
right. So how do we know where that $87 million was spent?
So it's tricky to track, but what we do is we have a Destination International, which all of our regions belong to. We work with them, and they have a calculator that is calibrated into the market here. So the things we can do are things like off-site events, are things like transportation if they're booking buses, hotel rooms, meeting space. We can plug those numbers in. What is difficult to track is, like anybody else, is what people do on their free time. So that would be almost impossible for us to track. So what we do is we take the numbers and we plug them into, and I'm happy to send you what something like that looks like for one event, so you can see kind of how that fans out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would also think that you say resulting in 123,132 hotel nights. I'm pretty sure you can tell how many were in Providence.
That we can do, yes. That we can break down, and we can tell you how many are in Providence, how many are in Warwick, how many are in the northern half of the state. Absolutely, we can do
I don't
that.
know that we need that, but it's just good to know. That's
Yeah,
all.
no, if you need it, we have it. Absolutely. So just briefly about the losses, and we've talked about this before. Providence, the CVB events that we booked have lost about $73 million in that direct spend for the state of Rhode Island. And then particularly Providence and Warwick were hard hit. We saw a 70.3% year-over-year decrease in revenue, and Warwick saw a 46.2% decline.
So stop there a second.
Sure.
I want to look at that number again. So we lost 73 million in direct spending. That includes everything.
Yep, that includes everything, and that I want to make a clarification there. So that includes meetings that are lost and postponed. And I think most people would say, well, postponed is still coming. But what happens is when you postpone an event, they're now taking meeting space that we may have been able to book something else in. So there is still a loss.
Right, and that includes food too, another thing?
Yep, it includes everything.
Okay, so let me say this back to you. So business booked by the PWCVB lost $73 million in direct spend revenue for Rhode Island. And as far as you know, that means the entire state?
Yes, we can break it down into what was lost for Providence, what was lost for Warwick. We can't do, like I said, there are ancillary things that we'll never be able to do, which is someone staying in Warwick that says, I want to go to Newport, I've never seen the ocean, I'm going to add a day on. So
Yeah, right.
Those are things we can't track, but we can track the other pieces of it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So just some things that we worked on with to explain the volatility of what has happened. So my team, it was funny, people would say, well, you must not be working, there are no meetings. And unfortunately for my team, they never had to work harder. We've had business that has been postponed 2 or 3 times. And the ongoing negotiation with the convention center to turn it to its intended purpose has been quite a lot of time. As you know, we looked like we were in a great place in October, and then the second surge happened, and that really started a second wave of losses. One of the things that we did have to do with the convention center being closed and the Dunkin' Donuts Center really being turned into a vaccination center, we've had to basically pick up some of the responsibilities of the staff there, and with some of the placing of the business into the convention center. We feel ourselves as an extension of the convention center staff. So when we were needed, we jumped in. And then I will not go through all of this, but we really had to do a lot of work around safety and sanitization and working with state agencies on safety protocols for crowd sizes, really at any gathering. Using Heart Grant funding, we're working on a hybrid studio that will sort of bridge that gap to meetings coming back fully. And the plan is to, we have a speakers bureau where we have speakers statewide that we offer up to speak at meetings and conventions. And we're hoping to marry that with the hybrid studio. So if there's someone at Salve that wants to talk at a convention, in Montana, but can't make the trip, they could use that studio. So we're trying to think of creative ways to augment our services.
So you have, let me ask a question about that. So you have technical staff that are going to be able to do that?
Oops, sorry. Yes, what we're doing is we're partnering with the convention center staff, ambient sound. So we purchased the equipment. We are looking at where exactly we're going to place it, and then we'll work with ambient sound to run it. The technical staff will not be a part of our staff. We don't have that skill set.
Yes, okay.
And then, of course, I say sales must go on. So we did a lot of work with marketing this state, including virtual trade shows, marketing campaigns. We have a really neat partnership with Madison, Wisconsin, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that is aimed at meeting planners that have to book one in the Midwest, one in the East Coast, and one in the West Coast. So we work with them, and that allows us to stretch our budget further. And then a little bit about what we call hub and spoke, and that we've referred to a little bit throughout this. So we do a group tour business, and typically the group tour business that we do, they will stay in Providence or Warwick, but they will use that as sort of their home base and then spoke out to different places within the destination. The other thing is we push something with our services team called Extend Your Stay. So we'll do Q&As on social media saying, oh, you're coming for a convention here, you should definitely check out wherever in the state, whether it be Blackstone Valley or Block Island. We also work very much to create customized microsites for each meeting that comes in. And a part of that is always Explore Rhode Island, which is on our website and links to all of the other regions so that people can fan out and look at other parts of Rhode Island. This is a big one we're very excited about. This is, we believe that the recovery will have to begin at home. We're working with the Partnership for Rhode Island, Providence Business News, Johnson & Wales University, and we're asking people to meet in Rhode Island. And that's just not limited to the convention center. That's anywhere they feel comfortable meeting. And we're looking at any of these things that are on this list. And so our hope is that people will take advantage of booking meeting spaces throughout Rhode Island. And then I just wanted to show some of the collaborative marketing efforts. We really took our responsibility during the pandemic to all work together and to also do some things for the state that would lift both the morale of the state as a whole and also obviously raise money. This is a morale booster. Go Providence partnered with Coast 93.3 and Rhode Island Monthly and really honored people who were making contributions on the front lines and did some giveaways and prizes. So that was at the beginning of the pandemic to get people excited. This is one we're extremely proud of. Style Week Northeast and Commerce worked with us, and we created the grassroots movement, Masked Up Rhode Island. We spearheaded that and did social media projects. You can see we actually had our logo beamed up on the Superman building, and it was really about encouraging awareness. And I think a highlight of my career is getting a mask on the big blue bug. If I do nothing else in my life, I think I've achieved something right there. And we were, of course, honored for our efforts with the Best of Rhode Island Award. The big one that I think people know about is Buy Local Rhode Island. We led that statewide effort to revive the Rhode Island Foundation's program. We worked with all of the tourism regions to create a list of 100 ways to buy local, and then we designed a website, ran the ad campaign, secured additional sponsorship money, translated everything into Spanish, and executed the social media strategy. And I'm sure you've all seen it. It was a very successful program. And then we took our partnership a little further with Rhode Island Foundation, Rhode Island Hospitality, and Frog and Toad. And we actually sell T-shirts featuring the artist's interpretation of that logo. And we've raised thousands of dollars for Rhode Island Hospitality's Employee Relief Fund. So this is a little bit about the Buy Local program that we, and you can see we worked, the Buy Local 100 Ways includes a chunk from every region in Rhode Island. We used our Take It Outside money to build a lending library of furniture and equipment that can be utilized by hospitality businesses and nonprofits statewide. So if you are doing a block party and you need tents or you need tables and chairs, you can request those items from us, and you can come and pick them up from us, and you check them out like books, and you check them back in when you're done. We also distributed more than 100 heat lamps to help hotels and restaurants in Rhode Island. Big one that we worked on, we partnered with Blackstone Valley and Warwick Tourism, and we did a winter marketing campaign that's actually still running called Joy Rides. And it's basically driving tours throughout the northern half of Rhode Island. Blackstone Valley and Warwick were our partners. They provided content and some of the advertising dollars. And then we took the marketing strategy, created the website, and funded the majority of the ad dollars. And we launched that campaign and worked it through the holiday season. And this is a little bit of the Joy Rides website. So you can see it was a true partnership. Another one, when the event industry, particularly in weddings, was really suffering, we partnered again with Warwick. We partnered with Rhode Island Monthly and their Engaged publication, and we actually created a database of wedding and special event venues in Rhode Island and worked with them to promote special offers, and we did an advertising campaign that targeted brides and grooms in New England, hoping to get more wedding business. And because the thought was, well, the wedding industry was really hurting, let's get some deposits in for when we can actually have weddings. And then a little bit about the work we've been doing to bolster particularly our downtown core, because as Providence goes, really, so does the rest of the state. And so for us, it was very important to try to keep our downtown core and our tentpole organizations healthy, because those are the things that bring people to the city and bring businesses to the city. So a big one that we have been working on consistently is collaborating with like-minded agencies to really support downtown businesses in light of the sort of exodus of different key groups. Working with key assets that really draw people, Waterfire, the Roger Williams Park Zoo, and PPAC, to ensure that they'll return back to business. One of the things we feel really strongly about is inclusivity, and we're working with the Elorza administration to make sure that we can also bolster businesses throughout the city, and particularly those where English might not be the first language. And then we really took the infrastructure that we had with Providence Restaurant Weeks, and we retooled them to reflect the circumstances of the pandemic. And we did a lot of work around promoting restaurants, and there were restaurants statewide that participated, and doing menus of takeout options. So, and then just a little bit about our financial health. You can see in March of 2020, we had a staff of 25. As the pandemic hit, we went down to 7. We were able to bolster back up to about 13 in August, and currently we are at 17 staff members and plan to stay that way. Every staff member is currently part of the work share program, and we are working 4 days a week due to our budget issues. And then just a little bit about our budget issues. You can see our hotel tax revenue total in 2019 and 2020. That is a 58% loss year over year. We did get grants. I do say grants sometimes are pass-throughs, such as some of the Take It Outside equipment, or it's very restricted in its use. But with those grants, we have an income, without those grants, we have an income loss of about 43.42% of our income. With the grants, it's 27.8. And we haven't, obviously we're still in 2020, but by far in terms of Providence hotel tax losses, the biggest losses of the pandemic were in January and February of 2021. So that is a little bit about our organization and kind of the work that we have been doing and sort of where we are economically at this point.
So thank you very much. That was very informative. But what goes through my mind is that the real concern that I hear from folks around the state is, what is the 5% we're giving to Providence doing for us? And I don't know how we can equate that, because that's really the question. And, we can look at the number of hotel rooms and we can look at the sports events that get, but, I don't know how when Louise spoke earlier, she spoke of a lot of money that had gone to Providence. So I don't know. I'm just putting that out there.
I do understand that, Rep. Carson, and I certainly don't want to sit here and say we're closed off at retooling the formula, because we absolutely are not. We just know what we need to make it whole, to do the kind of programming that we've done, and we've suffered tremendous losses. And that's part of the reason that we're looking at some legislation in Providence is to distribute those taxes differently. And that, to me, is the first step in trying to find alternative solutions to that 5%. I certainly don't want to sit here and say, give it to us. We're open, and we are willing to work with our tourism partners and with the legislature to come up with a solution that allows us to do not only the work we do in Providence and Warwick, but the statewide work, but that maybe takes the pressure off that 5%. So we are certainly not here in any sort of defensive mode. We are certainly here in a collaborative mode.
Yeah, I want to also welcome Chairman Casey here. He's on the call right now. I invited him because he is the author of one piece of legislation that's examining the formula. So that's why I asked him to join us. Do you think that some of those responsibilities that you're doing should really belong in a statewide capacity? Like, should the state really be doing some of those things? Should Commerce be doing some of the things you're doing? Should you just be working on just Providence instead of trying to organize all these statewide things?
Well, I think, that's certainly a question for Commerce, but I also think that with the statewide money comes statewide responsibility, and that was what we were trying to do, is really reflect that. So in addition to the money that goes to the state owned convention center, what we were trying to do is say, this is a really tough year. This is a really tough time. Let us do the best we can, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else. And I'm certainly, I do want to commend it. There have been collaborative efforts. We work very closely with Warwick. We've worked statewide on buy local. We've worked with the Blackstone Valley. We are collaborative in nature. And I just think that, I think a pandemic that we've never seen before is the time to roll up your sleeves and do what you can to help who you can with what you have.
You're right about that. You're right about that. Are there any questions for Kristen? Terry?
Yes. So you said you were 43% down, and so that's just for Providence. Do we know if some of the other districts were similarly affected? Would that be given?
That was for our organization, ma'am. So that is what our budget, our revenue went down those years. Yes.
Okay.
So,
and I'm trying to
understand that. You also said there was $73 million worth of losses. Is that the 43%?
No, the $73 million losses is the economic impact that was lost with the business that was taken out of the meetings and conventions and sporting events that we statewide. So that was our collective loss as a state. The CVB, that what I just showed you was the CVB's loss.
As a state or as a region?
No, that 73 million is, I can break it down, but I think I want to say about 60 was the Providence Warwick region, and the rest is a statewide loss.
Because I thought it was a $4 billion a year industry.
We're talking about just the business that the meeting that my organization books that are meetings, conventions, and sporting events. So that doesn't include any leisure travel. That's just my little slice of the pie that I'm working on in that particular way, if that makes sense.
Okay. And so I've heard you say you collaborate with Warwick and Blackstone, but I hadn't really heard about Aquidneck Island, what your collaboration is with Aquidneck Island.
So what we worked on, the Buy Local Rhode Island campaign, which was a statewide campaign, which Evan's marketing team was absolutely a part of. And then the Meet in Rhode Island campaign that we're working on would encourage people to book meetings and conventions, not just in Providence and Warwick, but throughout the state. That campaign is built on the philosophy that a rising tide will lift all boats. If Evan gets more meetings business into the Newport Marriott, then that's great.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kristen before we go to Evan? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next is Evan Smith, the director down here in Newport. Evan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Carson, and thank you for all your time this afternoon. My name is Evan Smith. I'm President and CEO of Discover Newport, which is the regional tourism organization that promotes the 9 towns of Newport and Bristol County. And certainly appreciate an opportunity to address you all today about what we think is a very real opportunity. I use the word opportunity because I see it as a very positive thing. So let me start by saying that we support Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau 150%. They are an extremely well-respected organization. They have a great program. They have a very well-respected staff. None of my comments today, none of the testimony I'm going to share with you is meant to criticize them. Kristen and I talk multiple times a week. We have very good relationships, and she is, I think, pretty clear on what I'm going to express with you all here today. So this isn't what I see about so much a problem as more of what we see as an opportunity to promote our statewide tourism marketing organization. And I'm going to try to break it down from several different angles because a lot of people on the call today and a lot of more people outside the call actually don't know how we got here today. So I'm going to start by saying that the current formula is flawed, and there's a long history about the origins, about how this convoluted breakdown came to be, but its origins can be traced back over 3 decades to when Mayor Cianci was the mayor of Providence, and he wanted to create other organizations inside the city of Providence, and he successfully created and lobbied to earn a percentage of the statewide lodging tax to support other tourism marketing organizations. Our principal objection to the current formula is basically lies in that historical flaw. Right now, 5% of the 5% lodging tax, and I know we're throwing around a lot of numbers, but there's the 5% state lodging tax, and 5% of that statewide is directed to Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau for a lot of the work that Kristen just explained to you. I think one of the things I'd like you to keep in mind as I'm chatting this afternoon is my comments and my outreach to all of you is to seek a level playing field for everyone. We want everyone to be successful, and no more so than our capital city and Providence. But we're seeking to try to accomplish that on a level playing field. And so that is our outreach to you today, is how can we untie a knot that Mayor Cianci created 30 years ago and make it a level playing field so that all organizations can create successful economic development through building tourism, building jobs, building tax revenues. So we all need to keep our eye on the end zone, which is about keeping the state's travel and tourism industry vibrant and healthy. So a couple of perspectives that I want to share with the committee here this afternoon, just to kind of express our feelings or where we're coming from. I'm going to keep saying how much respect we have for Providence, because that's very important that you don't lose track of that. But the first thing to keep in mind is that a percentage of the state lodging tax already goes to commerce. And I think that's important. All 50 states have a state travel office. We have always spoken in favor of having a well-funded, effective, targeted state tourism office, and we will continue to do so because the state tourism office is important to stay competitive with all the other states that we're doing. So want to acknowledge that a percentage of the lodging tax goes to the state. There are no other partners. There are people, organizations like the Airport Corporation, like the Hospitality Association, that do not enjoy earning a share of the state lodging tax, but they're still doing critical work on behalf of the state. So that's another perspective that I wanted to share with you. I want to go back to a point I was saying earlier about Providence being kept solid and whole and vibrant and a leader in the industry. We believe that there are ways to reformulate their funding so that they can earn what they need and hopefully more. The sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned. If anybody told me, is that enough money to market, I would say, no, there's no limit on how much we need to market today competitively to stay in a very competitive industry. But I think that part of the future for Providence is undoing this Buddy Cianci knot and looking at how they can earn revenue in a similar fashion to the other districts. But also I think that there needs to be exploration done about whether there's a dedicated city tax that supports the convention center. That is a common occurrence in many American cities. And also, I think there needs to be exploration about the creation of a tourism improvement district, which is an assessment form of raising money that also accomplishes the types of programs and marketing that Kristen shared with you, but funded through a different channel, okay? So good stuff, but how is it funded? So Kristen and I have talked before. I've shared my aspirations with her. She knows exactly where I'm coming from. And I hear her response, which is we're being crushed to our knees and we need air in order to revamp. And so we're both pretty clear on where we stand. Perhaps the one part of it that's a difficult rub for us, to be frank, and we have a very frank, honest conversation, is we are so appreciative of the collaboration that many of us do, and we do collaborate. That definitely is there, and there's a lot of illustrations and things we could point to. But there is another side to that book. We actually compete with Providence in the small meetings market. We are putting together proposals for similar pieces of business, and that's free enterprise. That's good. That's the way business should be. People shop all different kinds of destinations. But the rub I speak of is that on an annual basis, Newport sends about $375,000 a year in lodging taxes that were earned in Newport and Bristol County to Kristen. And I would be lying to you if I told you it doesn't bother us that we're actually funding the competitive side of what happens in this, not the collaborative side of what we're doing. So is there a collaborative side? Yes, there definitely is. Is there a competitive side? Sure is. So there's two sides to that coin, and that's a part of our concern about why we believe there's a better funding mechanism that can keep us all whole, all productive, and all moving forward. Rep. Carson, I wanted to commend you and others for establishing this commission because in my singular, humble professional opinion, the state has an opportunity here to really focus on the recovery of the industry and what we can do. And so this is a fabulous time for all of us to come together and work together to help the state economy recover. There are a lot of important industries in this state. Travel and tourism is one of those important drivers, but our industry has always sought to collaborate with all the other industries in the state. So I'm going to just say that we appreciate the opportunity to come together today to talk about this. This is not something new. It's something that we've wanted to endeavor to untie this CNC knot for a long time. It takes some thinking. It takes some innovation. It's going to take some research, but there are some great role models out there for us to look at, and I personally believe we can get this accomplished and stay on track of that goal where everybody has a balanced, fair, and structured funding mechanism that allows us all to truly be successful. So having said that, I'm going to close and thank you for your time, the opportunity to address you this afternoon. And Rep. Carson, if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be glad to field them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Any questions for Evan?
Yes, I have a
Deborah.
question. Thank you, Evan, for the presentation. Is there a place that you can point to? You mentioned there would be examples of other areas that do this right. Where would you point us to look?
I'd be glad to follow up with the commission to show some different examples. It's interesting as you look across the United States, how many different ways people approach this. There is no one model that fits all. But I'm glad to share some examples about how cities with convention centers achieve financial support and supplemental support for their convention center boxes. So I'll be glad to follow up with you.
Evan, I have a question. How much money did Newport lose during this pandemic, according to your estimates?
Well, let me rephrase your question if I could, Rep. Carson, because you forgot the qualifier. Was it all money or lodging money or restaurant money or, so was it a particular segment you wanted or just?
All money, an all money estimate would be helpful.
Travel and tourism is about a $900 million industry for Newport and Bristol County. We lost over half of that. When you add in lodging, attraction, shopping, dining, recreation, transportation, special events, we lost well over $500 million.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Evan? Okay, next is Bob Billington. Can someone from the staff get Bob Billington on the phone, please?
Chairwoman Carson?
Yes.
Bob has not been answering, but Joan is ready on the
Yes,
phone.
Joan is there next. That's correct. Okay, Joan.
Hello? Rep. Carson, Rep. Carson,
I can
am
hear
on?
you, Joan. We can hear you,
Oh.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. It got cut off. Thank you, Chairman Carson, members of the Oversight Committee, and everyone that is listening in from all the regions and the general public. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know Bob signed up to speak, so I'm sure he's on there. So for those people who don't know me, I'm Joan Milas. I have been in government affairs with the state for over almost 30 years, and I represent both Black Snow Valley and South County tourism. And I appreciate all of the focus on tourism right now. And my mantra has been, if not now, when? So I really want to thank the presentation that Kristen did, because I really feel that it reinforced what a lot of all the regions are saying, that the 5% is too challenging right now, post-COVID, or we're not really post-COVID, but during COVID. So with all of the initiatives that Providence is having, as Evan articulated, a lot of that is coming off the money from the other regions. And, you know, when times are good, that's great, but times are not that good. I mean, there was no area hit. Providence was hit very hard with COVID, but the Blackstone Valley between Pawtucket, Central Falls, Woonsocket was one of the hardest hit regions in the state. The initiative of tourism hospitality is to bring workers back. And those regions, the Blackstone Valley in particular, we've got to bring those workers back. That 5% that Bob has lost, and Bob, I'm not going to speak for him, I hope he is, but Bob is down tremendously. The Blackstone Valley does not have some of the resources that the other regions are blessed with, but Bob, who was recognized internationally by winning the International Tourism Award. There is no one, the conductor does a spectacular job, as do all the regions, but Bob has to work a little bit harder and a little bit longer than most of you, and I applaud his tenacity in doing so, and he's always there to help everyone. South County, the same thing. I mean, everyone is working as hard as they can, but if not now, when? Now, no one has the money to be giving any region. They have to help themselves. The people that live in those regions need their jobs back. People tend to forget that Twin River is the largest tourist attraction in the state. That employs a lot of Blackstone Valley people. Bob works collaboratively with them all the time. We need to have the Polar Express back that received a national award from the folks that put on Polar Express. South County has so much to offer, as do all the regions. We've got to work together, but everyone needs their money now. So with all the robustness that Kristen so beautifully talked about what Providence is doing, it has to be remembered, a lot of that initiative is monies that is being taken away from all the other regions when they should be helping themselves right now. So like Evan said, this isn't personal. This has nothing, we're all friends and we all live here. This is just the reality of what is going on to make the whole state equitable. And people also tend to forget that tourism is the third or fourth largest resource of revenue in the state. There's got to be better cooperation, with commerce, et cetera. But I applaud the legislature, Representative Casey, Representative Carson, all the districts for finally putting all of this on the table. It's unfortunate it's on the back of something horrible like COVID, but out of something bad always comes something good. So let's hope that that's the result of this. So thank you, Chairman Carson.
Thank you, Joan. Any questions for Joan? Okay, I think we have one, if not two more speakers. We have a Kara Young that wants to testify. So if you could get her on the phone, Zaire.
She's on the phone, Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Kara, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Hi, Kara. Can you introduce yourself and please make your comments to us? Thank you for testifying.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and also to the other members of the committee. My name is Kara Young, and I'm in strong support of this bill. I guess this sort of came to my attention. I work in media and with many different people in tourism, and I guess maybe it was about a year or so ago I found out about this, and I was really stunned to find out that 5% of really the marketing dollars from the Rhode Island tourism regions have been directed away from those regions to subsidize Providence. I really believe that every regional council is entitled to the work of their own region. They are the marketing and PR bodies for their region. And to have to give this money away to Providence each year, it really curtails the growth of each of these regions. It's money that they could be using to great advantage. These regions promote their respective areas too, and they don't ask for money from Providence. And their rising tides, all of their events, their attractions, help Providence as well. And yet, again, they do not seek subsidies for themselves from Providence. And they were talking about COVID. Every region, especially for restaurants, public events, et cetera, has had to grapple with COVID expenses that have come up as a result of the pandemic. And so these expenses and these losses are certainly not something that has been exclusive to the Providence Warwick CBD. And I just think that this is a great way to sort of rectify the inequity that has been the result of, as Evan had said from Discover Newport, sort of this CNC knot, as you said, which was basically put into place by CNC years ago. But I think it's really time to rectify this and to make it equal for the different tourism regions.
Thank you very much. May I ask you where you live, what region you live in?
I live in Narragansett.
Well, that's a great spot to spend a vacation. Thank you for coming on the call this morning. Is there any questions for Kara? Okay, I think that's it. Now, is Billy Walsh testifying, Zaire? I had his name on the list. Is he the last person?
He's on the phone.
Yes, he's on the phone, Chairwoman.
Okay, he's our last person to make a public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Bill Walsh on behalf of the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I'll be very brief in my comments because Kristen took you through a pretty comprehensive slide deck this afternoon. One important voice that we're still concerned isn't necessarily being addressed in this leveling of the playing field is the importance of the state's assets that happen to fall in some of the Providence region. It's important to remember that the state is on the hook and pays for the convention center, the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and the state's economic return on that is inherently tied to the performance there. And so the CVB fills that important role of adding that meeting and convention business, not just for the city of Providence's benefit, but for the state's, because if the state's going to run a red operation on those entities related to those state assets, that's going to impact the state budget in a very detrimental way. So it's just another consideration, or we want to make clear that it's an important part of the aspect that the CVB does for the benefit of the entirety of the state, as it is a major driver of the state's economic return as it relates to tourism. So with that, I'm just happy to answer any questions. I would just add that the legislation that was referenced, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with the regions, and we very much understand the perspective of where they're coming from, and to take the knot analogy that was presented by those folks is, untying this knot is one thing, but the legislation would let the boat drift away altogether. It presents an extraordinarily harm to the vitality of the CVB and the work that we do and the returns that we provide, both to the local areas that we focused on, but to the state as well. So, we do appreciate the opportunity to ensure that, everyone does receive the maximum funding to provide the best economic return for the interests of all stakeholders, with the state being one of the major players in that conversation.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, because one of the things that I jotted down, there's two comments I want to make. One is that it's unfortunate that Commerce is not here today speaking, because Commerce does play a role in marketing. And this whole debate, to me, comes down to who's doing what work and who should get paid to do it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And they are state assets, and maybe the state should manage those. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on this. The purpose here today is to have a discussion, but they are state assets, and maybe the state should run them. And that would free up some of Kristen's time and efforts. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. You're not wrong that there are state assets in Providence. That's absolutely true. And, I'm going to just sort of refer back to Evan's comments that, maybe this is a knot that needs to be undone. And there are a lot of pieces to it so that everyone is able to fund their own efforts. So, anyway, I just thought I'd comment on that as well. Looking at
sure. Well, CVBs have been recognized as the mechanism to do this around the country, and so I think the performance that Kristen presented to you is demonstrating the immense work that the CVB is doing as it relates to everything that it does within Providence and Warwick. But those state assets are the part of what we do, they are the economic engines for those entities.
And then I've asked a question that we can't get an answer here today, and that is, what does Commerce do? Because they're getting a chunk of money too. So I don't know. It's just a question I'm putting out there. Hopefully they'll come and testify on the bill when they're heard in finance, and we can hear a little more. But in my experience working on this issue, it's a matter of, who's doing the work and getting the money to do it. So I hear you on that. Are there any questions for Bill? Well, if they're not, I think we've come to an end here. I hope that this, was informative for my colleagues. We have a ways to go on this debate. We now have a few more people that understand this outside of the Finance Committee. And I'm sure we'll see each other when we go to testify in Finance later this month. Terry, did you want to say something? Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Kristen, could you please share that PowerPoint with us?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. I already sent it to CJ.
Great, super. We'll get that. It'll also be posted on our our legislative website, where we now keep committee documents. So that's right on the front page. You'll see that right there. So I'm sure they'll put that there. So I want to thank everybody for coming today and putting some stuff on the table for all of us to think about. And we'll see you another time, possibly at the bill hearing. Thank you to the staff very much for putting this together. Have a good afternoon.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.